Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the Black Geek Week series led by Spring LLC and hosted by Bloomberg. I'm Lirina Holloway, an engineer here at Bloomberg, also an active member in the Bloomberg Black and Tech community. Among many of our efforts at Bloomberg, we are committed to bringing people together through leadership, open dialogue, and action to help bridge the gaps and form strong networks within industries where diversity is underrepresented. And we are always thrilled to partner on our efforts with organizations like Spring LLC's Black Geek Week Sessions, whose mission is to bring together industry leaders and a Black and Brown population that's woefully underrepresented, not in numbers, but in recognition. Today, we have the pleasure to hear from guest speaker Aicha Evans, CEO of Zoox, in conversation with our very own Monica Bertran, head of Bloomberg's corporate communications, digital, and innovation team. Aicha's professional trajectory and accomplishments are extensive, impressive, and inspiring. We are thrilled to have her with us and to gain more of her insights. Thank you again for being here. For those of you who may be interested in learning more about Bloomberg or specifically our efforts in tech and diversity and inclusion, we'll be in touch via email after the event with relevant contact information. And now I'll turn it over to Michael Aiken, Managing Director from Spring LLC and the producer of Black Geek Week Sessions.
Thank you, Lorena. So despite the pandemic, Black Geek Week continues to expand, and we're thrilled to host our next virtual session. We'll resume live events when we are able to do so safely. As always, I want to thank Bloomberg for partnering with us, and Michelle Saran in particular. During this challenging environment, I know few other companies that have continued to invest in its employees. If you're considering a career change, you should give Bloomberg your highest consideration. And I know they're going to email you, but there's also a link in your invitation to view their current job listings. I also want to welcome the many new faces that have joined us. Black Geek Week, as you know, is designed to gather top technologists, engineers, creators, hackers, and thinkers to celebrate creativity, machines, data, and technology. We'll be introducing some new innovations shortly. They'll include some small technical classes so that we can really dig into other compelling topics and new or less known technologies. Visit blackgeekweek.org or follow us on Twitter at BGWeek to keep up on these developments. Again, as I always do, I want to acknowledge the exceptional talent that we have here. I always say that nothing is coming over the horizon that isn't represented right here or within the network we are building. We have engineers from NASA, we have PhDs from virtually any discipline you can think of, Rhodes Scholars, University valedictorians, institutionally funded entrepreneurs, and some of the best upperclassmen and women in the country. So thank you, we are proud to have you. So now for some quick housekeeping. If you have a question in this session, type it in the Q&A box that's right below the video window and we'll try to get to it. And without further delay, let me introduce Monica Bertran, head of Bloomberg's Corporate Communications, Digital, and Innovation Team, and Aicha Evans, CEO of Zoox.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. And it's so interesting, and welcome to you, Aicha, that I have the title of Digital Innovation Team. I'm probably the least digital person around. I don't know, my team might dispute that, but I don't think myself as, as a technologist at all. My background really is journalism. So I hope I do this conversation justice. So Aicha, thanks for joining us. And first of all, let me ask you about this COVID lockdown. How have you been? And have you been spending your time other than making deals with Amazon?
That's funny. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Look, it's kind of weird. I mean, I definitely feel cooped up, and it's awkward. But at the same time, it's been months. My family is doing well. In the grand scheme of things, I remind them that everybody is going through this, and they are sort of in good conditions, so it's okay. And from a personal standpoint, we've spent actually more time together. I've been cooking a lot. I love cooking, and just keeping myself sane and healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us have taken to cooking and other interesting hobbies. So Aicha, talk to us a little bit about what it is like to lead one of the hottest startups in the industry right now?
That's such a funny question, because I wake up every morning. I'm going to be honest. Some of these mornings I'm not showering. I shower later in the day. I get my cup of tea and I roll over to Zoom and look at my meeting calendar and hop on and listen, enable, talk, discuss. So to me, it doesn't feel like the hottest startup or anything like that. It's a job. At the same time, it's an incredible mission that I'm super proud of, and really, I think it's worthy. And so, yeah, there's a lot of excitement. And if I mix both COVID and Zoox, I can tell you that at the beginning of Shelter in Place, I was a little bit like, we're dead. We are literally, I don't know how we're going to do this. We can't go in the office. We're building a vehicle. Everybody's working on the same product. But then, channeled Andy Grove, who basically said, okay, you have to turn this into an opportunity. So to relate to your last statement, I'm much better now.
Yeah, good. Absolutely. So talk a little bit about your move really from Intel to Zoox. I mean, when you look at that career move, tell us a little bit about that background journey.
I was very happy at Intel. I still talk to a lot of people there. Sometimes my husband tells me, you don't work there anymore, because I'm still on the phone with folks. I had a great time and a great career. But I was also getting a lot of phone calls, and had a couple of false starts in leaving to go somewhere else. And I sort of had to have a one-on-one with myself about, okay, you're happy here. What would cause you to go elsewhere? And I sort of decided I was not going to go to another big company, because I felt it was sort of going to be the same movie, essentially. And better be in a movie that you understand, with characters that you understand, as long as you're committed to the company and the mission. But a friend of mine asked me, who's in the recruiting space, what would cause you to pick up the phone? And I said, well, first, it needed to be something impactful, something worthy, something that had really the potential to help transform society. One. Second, I did not want to go to the public sector, because I feel that I have 2 young kids, and when you are in the C-suite in some of these high-tech companies, the external demands are just too much in terms of the time that I can afford right now and the privacy that I want to afford my family. So I said it needed to be a private company, and I needed to really connect with the team. And most importantly, it needed to be a founder or founder team that was looking for somebody like me, because they felt they needed that at the stage of the company, as opposed to the board telling them that they needed somebody like me. Then I said, I don't know what industry it needs to be, but I need to fall in work love with it. And it needs to be in the Valley, because we had moved our family so much. And now our daughter is a teenager. And I don't need to be hearing 10 years from now how I messed up her life, moving her during teenage years. So those were my conditions. And I thought, nobody's calling me. That's sort of like Nirvana. And then they called about Zoox. My first reaction, by the way, was not positive. From the outside, and also remember at Intel, we at the time were looking at the AV space with a big acquisition, Mobileye. So when I looked at Zoox from an external lens, I felt it was too ambitious. And so I was like, that's maybe not the one. And then a few people I respect said, why don't you talk to them and learn Zoox from the inside? And then if you still feel that way, then who cares? Well, I went in and met a lot of board members, met our co-founder, Jesse Levinson, and it ticked all the boxes and more. And I haven't had a single moment of regret. It's been quite the journey.
That is interesting. When you say you wanted to go somewhere where the board or the company was looking for someone like you, what do you mean? And not being forced to take someone like you.
Well, okay. So Zoox, our mission is to create autonomy from the ground up. We think that mobility is really going to be transformed, all aspects of it. And So the technology and what the company had built, and by the way, it's not a young startup. It was founded in 2014, so it's been at it for a while. And the core technology and the sort of the foundation were there. But how do you take that and how do you make that a product? How do you go to market? How do you scale? We also went between 2014 and now. It's 1,000 people startup, so it's actually a fairly big company. How do you get this interdisciplinary team to work together because there's only one product? And so, from that standpoint, I think they were looking for somebody who had the experience, somebody who could bring people together, somebody who could look at the go-to-market strategy, who could look at the cadence and rhythm and orchestrate things around that. Last but not least, also somebody who would set up the company for a long term. This is going to be a long capital intensive journey, and it's not just for a baby startup on the side.
Mm-hmm. How did you bring people together? I know that, you've said that some best advice you've gotten was to be a connector, an enabler. So obviously you use some of those skills to do that, but how did you bring people together? You're walking into this, this new team. And it's fine for the board to sign on, but you have folks that you have to motivate.
So the first thing is, before you can connect people and help them work together, you have to know yourself. You have to be very clear about who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, how you tend to think, how you tend to process, and who you're more likely to listen to, because likes like. And you do that so that you're very clear on, I know what I know. What's more important to me is to basically get exposed to what I don't know, but it's necessary. So that's the foundation. Then you have to make sure that everybody's bought into the mission. If you're not missionary or if you're not into what we're doing, it's not going to work because it's audacious enough. So spend a lot of time doing that. Then sort of declare your intentions. First, all hands, I was just announced. And, you get so what's your 90-day plan? And what's your 12 months plan? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I just got here. I don't know anything. I can tell you one thing that's important to me. I told them openly, my goal was that 12 months from now, you will not remember whether I was here at the beginning of the journey or not, because I'll just be one of us. So once you have those things established, you have to be candid. You have to listen. You have to, what I call, be very, very, very respectful of the past, but very realistic about the present and the current state, and then optimistic about the future. You have to enlist. You have to understand what I call the hierarchy versus the multipliers and the change agents and the influencers. You have to give them the time and the energy. I spend a lot of times in one-on-ones. Now, you have to be careful because when you're the CEO, you don't want to be doing skip level one-on-ones and making commitments on behalf of managers, but just a sponge. And then sort of a lot of candid conversations about who we are, what are we doing, are we all on board? I have this thing about we discuss, we debate, then we decide, and then we move. And we don't revisit that. I would prefer if the majority agrees and commits, but at some point, some have to disagree and commit, or they have to vote with their feet and move on. So a lot of that, but super transparent, super candid, and really like a lot of help me understand. Is that really what's going on? I've noticed your body language. You're not saying much. Do you agree? Do you have a different view? And a lot of sign off at meetings. We're in the middle right now of a big decision. And last night I just sent a Google Sheet, anonymous, and say, are you interested in committing to this? Yes or no? Yeah. And comments, please.
Yeah, the worst is a passive aggressive. That's the worst in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the worst in the world. So despite all the challenges of the pandemic, though, it seems like a really exciting time for Zoox. The company really is talking about mobility at a time when obviously the talk about mobility has been thrust upon us, right? Because nothing really is going to go back to the same way. People are, questioning transportation, in all forms. So tell us more about Zoox, this fully autonomous car. It's quite exciting, but I'm sure quite challenging as well.
So Look, we have a basic belief in our company, and this is everybody believes that. Every time that the driver of a transportation vehicle changed, the vehicle had to be re-architected to match the driver so that it's safest and most convenient to drive. And so if you think about horse and carriage, right, that was the horse and then the person sitting and directing the horse and the way the carriage was architected. Then from there, we went to the internal combustion engine. And if you think about the human driver driving a car and you look at the architecture of a car from that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, right? The seating arrangement, so you're not distracted by the people in the back, the steering wheel, pedals, the console around the driver, and so on, the mirrors, and so on. And so the one thing we agree on in the industry is that AI is going to drive. Now, whether it's for ride hailing, whether it's for packages, whether it's to deliver physical services, who knows, but it is going to drive. And what AI needs to drive from a vehicle standpoint is very different than what a human needs. So your sensor architecture is going to be essential. You also have to think about human beings. We don't believe in retrofitting cars because a human knows how to drive a car. When they are in our vehicle, we don't want them to think about driving. We want them to think about being transported. Now, as far as the pandemic, look, I'm of two minds on this one. I know there's a lot of discussions about there's going to be a new normal, but it seems to me that this is not the first pandemic, and we didn't stop moving around and being transported. If anything else, you look at the Spanish flu, right? We still spent quite a few decades traveling, moving, driving, building our cities, and so on. So I think this too shall pass. Human beings are not, in my view, built to just be confined. And so we'll figure it out now, however long it takes. And so for us, the mission continues because we think that this model of autonomy for mobility is going to be key. And we look at it not just from a sort of happy technology standpoint. If you look at our urban environments, our cities, frankly, something needs to give, right? I mean, it's the pollution, the safety with all of the crashes and fatalities. None of us are in the mood to pay a lot more taxes so that we can rebuild everything and create new roads. The waste, by the way, I mean, in a city like San Francisco, 30% of the driving time is spent looking for parking. And by the way, 30% of the real estate footprint is for parking. Now, imagine a world where that real estate footprint in a city that has a lot of housing issues and so on, if we could reconvert that instead of parking cars that are depreciating and idle and inefficient 96% of the time, and we could recover that footprint and bring housing, jobs, and so on. We also think that the way our vehicle is constructed, it's going to provide new access. Our vehicle is not going to care what neighborhood it goes to pick up people and take them to where they need to go. And human beings, once they can get transported to knowledge, to economic access, to economic opportunities, great things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, the big news and the headline is that Amazon acquired Zoox for $1.3 billion. But the company actually had a pretty successful capital raise before that. So first, tell me what that call was like or that conversation. Hey, it's Jeff. I want to acquire Zoox. And then let's talk a little bit about like how Amazon is going to use the technology to maybe change the game for what they're trying to do.
Okay. So first of all, I don't know that it was acquired for 1.3. We haven't disclosed what it was acquired for. I know there's a lot of gossip out there, but I'm not commenting on it, but that's okay. Look, I mean, during the pandemic, I think, first of all, leading up to the pandemic, a lot of us inside the company were really having conversations about the fact that we needed a strategic partner. We needed somebody or a company that had bold thinking, that had long-term orientation, because this is going to be a journey for a long time. It's going to be a while before an AV can just go wherever it wants, whenever, without a map and so on. This is going to be, it's going to take building blocks. And then last but not least, we also wanted a company or a strategic partner that had a proven track record in creating or entering new businesses. So for us, Amazon is the ideal outcome. We are thrilled. They literally tick all of those boxes. I have a lot of respect for who they are, how they operate, and the way the call was, it wasn't really a call. That's not really the way it works. But you deal with their corp dev team. They were awesome. It went fairly quickly. We worked very well together. Had a great experience. And yeah, now we're inside and working, and our mission is not changing at all. And I know there's a lot of speculation in the press. I don't know how many times we can say this. This is a big opportunity. And by the way, if we can move people, then we can start worrying about moving other things. So so far, it's going extremely well.
Okay. Yeah, I was being tongue in cheek about the phone call from Jeff. When you look at the future of mobility and you're dead center in that, how do we as a community, and I'm talking about Black and brown communities, ensure that we are not left behind in that conversation? I know that you say that, it won't matter, that sort of autonomous vehicle may be picking up in whatever neighborhood, but in the overall big, broad conversations, how should Black and brown communities look at themselves as being involved in that and having some influence, whether it's from a technical standpoint and trying to work at companies that are doing this kind of work, or from a policy standpoint or some government standpoint?
I think that we should look at it as an opportunity. Inflection points are the best opportunities to sort of reset or exceed a threshold. The wonderful thing about AV is that it's not just about the architecture, meaning the software stack, the sensors, and electric and battery. A whole new ecosystem is going to be created. So you can work on AV if you are targeting policy, government, regulatory affairs. You can work on AV from it's going to take a while to sort of make this become the normal nominal way people move around. And so from a sort of liberal arts, from a UX, from a product experience, from a marketing, from how you approach people, obviously from a technology standpoint, when it comes to engineering, look, this is the broadest set of disciplines I've had and skill set I've had to interact with. I mean, one day you're dealing with a machinist, literally, who's telling you about cutting the blocks of steels and some of the things we have to look at. And then the next day you're talking to a dreamy AI engineer who's telling you about like the latest in machine learning. So there are so many different opportunities that I'm really encouraging and inviting people to look at it from an ecosystem standpoint and see whether their passion and their career path can intersect. Last but not least, companies like ourselves, we're not alone in the ecosystem. I think we're going to have to make a concerted effort to reach out, because there's an opportunity to work with cities, there's an opportunity to work with public transportation, there's an opportunity to work with schools. One of my big areas of interest is Lego robotics. And I know that a lot of folks in our communities don't have access to what I think is already a differentiator starting at 7 years old. And not just to be an engineer, by the way, just to be a project manager, to look at how things work in the corporate world. And when I noticed that our communities were not as involved, I thought it was just a money problem. I'll just donate some money. And they explained to me, well, the money's nice, thank you, we'll take it. But, we have a lot of parents who are working weekends or who don't have the means to take their kids to the Lego robotics meet. Also, when I look at my kids' teams, right, everybody's from the Valley. Oh, we need a NASA expert. Oh, hello. Tick, tick, tick. Yeah. Well, the access is not there. And then they also don't have the tutoring in schools. And so for companies like us, I think this is an opportunity to use this and actually be proactive in the community and pull people in.
Yeah, that is great insight and much needed. Let me remind everybody that if you have a question, please send that in and we will get to those in just a few moments. I'm also conscious, Aicha, that many people on watching this webinar right now are interested in sort of career advice. And we touched on some of that at the beginning, but I want to get back to that for a moment. And, as I did mention that you said that one of, some of the best advice that you received is to be an enabler and the best enabler, listener, facilitator, helper, and connector that you could possibly be. And I want you to go really a step further. You talked a little bit about how you employed some of that in the Zoox team when you came there, but how and what advice would you give for people who are starting out in their career? And at what point did you embrace, some of that? And at what point do you think anybody can embrace some of that in how they're approaching their career?
Okay, so I think that I made a mistake. I approached that when I hit a wall. So initially, I was a do engineer like everybody else, and when I became, and now I always was sort of good at leading people both formally and informally in some ways. I don't know if it's because I'm an older child or I'm adaptable from having lived a lot of different places, or maybe it's just the way it is. And so, but as an engineer, my mentality inside of me was still, I'm competing. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the most productive. I'm going to get the hardest assignments. I'm going to be noticed and I'm going to get promoted, yada, yada, yada. And then when I was pulled to be a manager, you would not have wanted to be on one of my teams. It was a catastrophe because I was trying to turn them all into essentially a multiplication of me. And that's not the way it works. Nobody wants to be on a team where the manager is competing with you or trying to adding too much value, or that just doesn't work. I had to learn, and I learned that through coaching, that my job was now different. The expectations for what I needed to do were different. I needed to make the team the best team possible and be the coach and the quarterback, or whatever your analogy is, to make that happen. And it was hard. It was very hard. And it also, I had to learn restraint, because it's hard to switch from one mode to the other. So now that I'm giving this advice, I actually think you can do this even as an individual contributor. Now, still compete, quote unquote, do the best, stretch yourself, don't accept the status quo. If you're not getting butterflies every so often, you're
Aicha, you guys tell me if I'm hearing the same thing. I'm hearing a little audio breakup. So if you would just repeat that answer. Let me see if I still hear you. Yeah, okay.
All right. So I don't know where I left off, but as an individual contributor, map your customers and your suppliers. What I mean by that is none of us produce something alone. And so who are the people whose deliverable you depend on? And who are the people who depend on you for their deliverables? Mm-hmm. And literally spend time not just having a transactional, like, here are the requirements and here's the delivery date, but literally talk to each other. How are things going? Are we clear on what we're doing? By the way, if everything is green all the time from a status standpoint, what are our opportunities for a better plan? If things are red, either for you or supplier or customer, okay, what can we do about it? How can we help? If things are yellow, caution, there may be risk. Okay, how do we prepare? What are our backup plans? So that's a simple methodology that will make you a better listener, a better connector. It will also prepare you for leadership, whether you want it on the technical ladder or on the management ladder. And plus, you'll have more fun on top of it.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to throw in a few more questions here that folks are sending in, because I want to make sure I get to those, and then we can pick up with some more of my questions. So we have Zuby in Austin, Texas. Huge congrats, Ms. Evans. I'm working on an emerging tech brain control applications, and I'm having a difficult time breaking into the right networks. Do you have any tips about networking? And maybe what did you do along your career in networking, your early days, and then maybe, later on, obviously gets easier as you're more well-known, I think.
Yes, definitely. You have to sort of be bold. Yes, I have tips in the sense that, first of all, speak up and be seen. Don't shrink. because if you shrink, nobody sees you and nobody notices you and nobody comes and pulls you up. Second of all, map the people and the companies, so the experts in your field and the companies that are in the field, and literally start creating a grid of as many degrees of separation until you can find somebody there. Plus, with now, the way social media is, you can DM almost anybody in the world. Now, be careful with that, right? Because you don't want to be one that is sent to DevNull or the junk folder. And then ask for help. Keep telling everybody in your network. So, and then ask them to ask their network. And that way you create sort of a spiral.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Another question I had, which is also interesting as we were doing a little pre-conversation, is that you spent a good part of your career basically at two companies, I think, if I'm correct about that. So what's your advice about how people might be going about planning their careers, particularly in this new environment? And you have many people who are moving around more. And how does COVID change things at all, particularly for, opportunities for Black engineers or Blacks in tech?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part first. Look, you have to be clear with yourself. Like, yes, I spent the bulk of my career at Intel and Zoox, but inside of Intel, I had many different jobs, 14 different bosses, really picked my assignments very carefully. I don't know. And be careful with the planning, because you will be also limited by essentially what you plan yourself. A lot of people told me, oh, you need to go work on the CPU machine because we don't think your career will advance at Intel unless you go work on that. I'm like, yeah, me and the other 80,000 people, that's a great way to get noticed. Plus, at least at the time, I don't wake up in the morning passionate around CPUs and memory. That's just not who I am. I am grateful for them, but that's not what I want to build. So be really clear about who you are, what you're interested in. And then if you can move, if inside of the company, if somebody, like, know yourself. If you like steady state, then make sure that you're sort of progressing vertically within that discipline and that expertise and getting deeper also. If you like a lot of change and disruptions like me, look for different opportunities within the company, because you have a built-in network. Now, if you're not happy, okay, and you know that, because all of us at night when we brush our teeth and brush your teeth and floss, tell me, I'm telling you right now, otherwise you'll regret it later. But when you're doing that, you know whether you're happy, you know whether you're being stretched and so on. And if you're not finding it where you are, by all means, please go look at other opportunities. And I advise people, this is very unconventional, but I really think it's important. You should interview somewhere once a year. It doesn't mean and I know if you go, be careful, because if you go look for a house, usually you buy one, but this is a way for you to keep your network going. This is a way for you to, what I call, feel safe. Like, you have other options and opportunities, and that allows you to be bolder, right? And it keeps you current. The best time to find a new job is when you actually have one. Now, last but not least, I do not subscribe to this notion. And again, I don't want to be judgmental. I want to be careful. But I can tell you that when we look at resumes where people are jumping every 2 to 3 years, they got a lot of explaining to do. And usually with us, if you have to explain, you're losing, basically. Because make sure that you don't appear to be a mercenary. And you will lose opportunities by doing that, by the way, because there will be an element of trust that will be missing. Now, if you need to jump around at the beginning or at a certain period because you're looking for something specific, that's okay. But if that's the balance of your work, I'm telling you, eyebrows will be raised.
Okay. Good advice. What do you think are some of the best opportunities for Black engineers right now?
Well, first of all, tech is still hiring. So that's a good thing. Now, I think it's a little bit more complicated right now because we're all over video conferencing. And there can also be, if you're onboarding somewhere, you're onboarding virtually. So there can be a little bit of isolation. And so what I would say is the first part of the advice, look at the opportunities out there, even if, and check things out and keep yourself fresh and interview. A lot of people are looking for us right now too. So that's an opportunity. But once you get the new role, still do the one-on-ones. Map out the people you need to meet. By the way, in some weird way, people have more time for those meetings in some weird way. Yeah. Second of all, find the support groups very quickly and be proactive. So I guess my conceptual advice is this is a time to be proactive. This is the time to be bold and take chances. And this is a time where the dynamics are favorable because a lot of people are really waking up with everything that's going on. I have so many friends who are waking up and looking for people like us. So take the chance.
Absolutely. Let me get another question in from our audience. Miles says, if you could start over, what career choices would you have done differently early in your career?
I don't know that I'm not a regret kind of person. I'm sorry. I'm sure if I think long and hard enough, I had enough heartaches that I could come up with something. But by and large, I'm one of those that I look back, I look at failures, I look at learnings. I can maybe talk about, I had one spectacular public failure, like something that was mine attached to me, and it was spectacular. I learned a lot. And sometimes I wake up and think maybe I could have been more collaborative. I think I was locked in a battle with another camp. We disagreed and we battled it out. And I'm not sure that helped the company in the end. So that's maybe one thing I would have changed. But in general, you can't do anything about the past. Focus on the future. And there's always tomorrow to make something better. Second of all, this is my philosophy. It's a Buddha quote. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It just doesn't work. I don't want to live my life angry. And so if it's broken, fix it. And so no major regrets. Sorry.
Yeah. And if the pandemic hasn't taught us anything, time is short. So you don't really have a lot of time to, hang on to a lot of things these days in terms of, who you're angry with or not. One of your philosophies as well is to look for opportunities where others aren't. I don't know if I said that right, but can you talk more about that as it relates to your career approach and maybe some advice for others?
Yes. So a lot of people tell me, well, I'm doing great, but I'm not being noticed. And I'm just, a cog in the wheel. I'm like, well, what project are you choosing? If you are doing if you're just one of the bees following the honey, how are you going to get differentiated? And so spend some time. Now, know your passion, right? And know yourself, because it's okay to be a steady state person. But if you really want to move quickly and be noticed, go for the projects that people are afraid of. Go for the projects that are important to the company, but somehow they are stuck. Go study those and see if you can bring something different to the equation. Once you're there, don't be a shrinking violet. It is very likely, especially given the numbers today around D&I, that nobody has your experience, nobody has your viewpoints. And by the way, if it's early in your career, you're supposed to be stupid anyway and make mistakes. So even if you say something wrong, nothing bad's gonna, worst case, somebody will correct you or somebody will help you. And then when you go towards those things, first of all, people recognize boldness, they recognize courage, you will get sponsorship, you'll turn a few heads, and you'll get noticed. And then water that plant. That's my philosophy.
Excellent. I have a question from John. He is asking, or he says, it's interesting that as a strong individual technical contributor, you ended up in the role as CEO instead of CTO. Can you expound on why you didn't go the technical leadership route?
I could have. It's just a comedy of errors or how it worked out. In general, what I told myself is I was not going to get a non-C-suite job. I mean, I've earned it at this point. In this case, there was already a co-founder and CTO. He's awesome. And by the way, he's better than I am at that. And we're very complementary because I bring the scale, I bring sort of the infrastructure of shipping a product, and that's also technical work. And so that's just the way this one worked out. And maybe I should I don't plan or I don't say I'm going to be X or I'm going to be Y. Very early on, people actually said, oh, your C-suite material or your CEO material. And I'm like, well, what about what I want? I don't know. So I think especially early in your career, instead of planning and saying, I want to be VP those are letters. What impact are you going to make? What opportunities are you going to grab on? How are you going to keep your antennas open for opportunities and for ways to go impact something? And then the rest will take care of itself. So in the case of Zoox, it's not that I said I want to be CEO or I want to be CTO. They had one already. The position that was open was this one, and I was contacted for. It fit the bill, and that's what happened.
Absolutely. All righty. Let's get on to some other questions that I have. And again, still taking some more questions if anybody is sending. When you see presently, we'll continue on that vein of like what people are looking for right now, right? And this is an opportunity for many Black and Brown engineers and others in other industries as well. And, we've seen a huge rally cry as well about inclusiveness in the VC community, particularly. Do you think that we're going to see a substantial change, or is this sort of a blip on the radar right now? And would you consider doing or becoming an angel investor or a VC investor in the future?
So I'm an optimistic person. I want to be very clear about that. I just think that's a nicer way to live life. And that doesn't mean I'm criticizing people who aren't. I also believe in the human spirit. I'm a little bit more, and this probably will raise some questions, I'm a little bit more balanced about the whole situation, because what we haven't solved in 2,000 years, we're not going to solve overnight. So, and by the way, it's very difficult to change this without influencing the majority population in a positive way. And it has to be, the final result has to be abundance. Because otherwise human beings it's well documented that when they think you're coming to take away something from them, they will go to war if needed. So I want to make sure that I lay out that foundation. All right. Mm-hmm. Look, I think things are going to change, but I think it's going to take longer than any of us want. And am I actually going to say this? Yes, I am. I think that the corporate Black and Brown is not pulling their weight. I think that we are letting our community, our society, and our capabilities be defined by the entertainment and sport industry. And I look at what LeBron James is doing. I don't know him. This is not a commercial for him or anything. It's just from what I read. I look at what he's doing from the charter school standpoint. Mm-hmm. I look at the role model he's being and how he's behaving, even though he could go out there and be as crazy as all the other crazies. And I'm like, to me, that I'm wondering, Black and Brown corporate America, what are we doing? What are we making possible? Where are we actually investing our time, our energy? Where are we speaking up? And I'm not quite sure exactly what to do about that, but that's something that's been really going through my mind. Second, in terms of investing, I just started. I'm kind of dabbling into that. It's hard because it's a profession. I don't exactly know how it works. So one of my good friends, Aileen Lee from Cowboy Ventures, we just had a call a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, hey, girlfriend, I need an hour where you can just give me the X's and O's of this. And what am I even supposed to be thinking? And how am I supposed to look at it? And in the meantime, I have a friend in London that has a fund, the Balderton Fund, and I've invested in that. And Europe is important to me. I mean, because of Africa and bouncing between France and Senegal. And I've been wondering why the US and China are creating so much innovation, and what is happening in Europe? Why doesn't that work? Yeah. And so, yes, I will consider that, but I'm learning still.
Yeah. I appreciate your comments about what others are doing outside of the entertainment industry. because, and actually I even look at the entertainment industry, and I think there's so many people there, and I guess they flock to what they know, are starting production companies. And I'm thinking, my thought is like, wow, do we need another production company? Maybe, but, a lot of, all players and others have put their money behind that. So maybe someone like you can influence them to move in another direction. And that's not to say there have been others who have definitely become, VCs and, invested in other things. But I concur, I'll say, with you that I think that we need to examine, what we are doing in corporate America and how can we change things a bit more, and maybe looking more at, like, you're talking about education, technology, and supporting those things in a big way. Let me get some more questions in. Zoe is asking, he says, thanks for speaking with us. What are ways that you are continuing to learn and expose yourself to new ideas and knowledge?
Well, first of all, at work, there's a wealth of knowledge, and we constantly have people from the research field, plus the field I'm in. There's still a lot to discover and figure out. But then you read a lot, ask questions, be curious and inquisitive. There are no dumb questions. If somebody thinks you have a dumb question, they're not worthy of your time anyway. And then figure out sort of ways, like through your feeds, like you organize your social media so that you're getting what you need. Now, make sure it's not all one-sided, right? Because you need different views and opinions. And then last but not least, on things that I'm very set on, but then I hear something, I will try and figure out my way to meeting that person or having an introduction to that person so that I can ask questions and learn something about the topic.
Excellent. Another question from Phil. How do you go about deciding what to work on at Zoox? Work on yourself at Zoox, yeah.
So in terms of my, there's the normal transactional stuff, right? I have one-on-ones, I have meetings, I have what I call emergencies versus things that it's more of a rhythm and cadence, and we're organizing things. In terms of right now, we really, with the Amazon thing, a feeling of stability is really important for the team because, human beings don't like change. And then in terms of my own personal behavior, I have some weaknesses and some things that are really bad. Like, I'm really bad on Friday afternoon. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. But it's almost like I'm tired. I'm exhausted. There are only like a few hours between me and my glass of wine and a good dinner. And so I've noticed that I just lose it. I've had to apologize a couple of times to people. And so I'm working on figuring out how to contain that, shall we say. And the second thing I'm working on is a lot of encouraging our engineers to exercise their EQ and not be stingy with it. Because I've noticed that I'm becoming actually a hub and spoke, which is bad, because a lot of people will come tell me the bad news, will come tell me the problems, will come tell me the opportunities. And, of course, like everybody else, I have an ego too. I'm like, yeah, that's good, but that's actually not good for Zoox. And how do I get people to go tell who they need to tell and don't feel either fear or shame or whatever feeling is preventing them from doing that? So those are the two things I'm laser focused on right now.
Tell me, as we kind of wrap up here, we're coming up on the hour, but one thing I wanted to know is, what about the future for you, not only for Zoox, but for you personally?
I get that question a lot. I'm hoping this is my last role. I would like to be, everybody has demos. That's not the issue. I truly believe that, autonomous technology is that next frontier. The same way when we had the ships cross the Atlantic, that was sort of an inflection point for the world and society. Airplanes, the internet for me, by the way, is just a virtual transportation system. And I truly believe that AV is that worthy and that transformational for society. So I want to get to market and I want to scale. That's my plan right now. I don't want to do more boards right this minute. I I've been on boards, and I'm on a big one now, and you don't want to be a tourist board member. You actually have to be involved. You have to have bandwidth for the management team if they so desire. Yes, there are only 4 board meetings, but stuff happens. M&As, this and that. You have to be present. And frankly, I just don't have the bandwidth for that right now. It's all Zoox, the SAP board, and my family. In 4 years, she's going to college, and that's basically it. So.
Yeah.
That's the future. Now, when I retire, I would love to find a way to have impact in terms of corporate black and brown, and really have measurable impact. And then my second passion is, I think that math is not taught correctly. It is taught in a way that is scary to people, and especially to girls. And I would love to find some way to change that.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's exciting. All right. So we have a lightning round, which I always like. And this was suggested by Michael, but I always like a lightning round too. So I'm going to fire away. Who are 3 Twitter users everybody should follow?
I don't know. I don't think about it that way. I think figure out what you're interested in and keep it balanced and pick. But no, I don't. I don't even know. Sorry. On that one, I don't have a suggestion.
No worries. If you had to go for an ice cream cone with, who would it be? Jeff Bezos, Andy Grove, or Michelle Obama?
Right now, I mean, so Andy helped me become who I am. And so I had the ice cream cone many, many times. And so now I'm just grateful and thankful, and he saved me during this Zoox thing. And then I would figure out a way to finagle my way into having both an ice cream cone with Michelle and Jeff.
And Jeff. All right. What is the most important advancement, technical skill or storytelling?
Storytelling. You can always find technical skill.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your career journey?
I would give it an 8.
Okay, almost there, almost at the 10. I love it. Favorite COVID binge watching show?
Oh, are you going to make me do this? Oh my God. I actually watched, oh God, am I going to say this? Game of Thrones. I binge watched it.
Yes. All right. Good. Excellent. Now you're caught up with everybody else.
Yes.
And what are you looking forward to in the next 3 months?
I hope we remember who we are as a nation, no matter what happens. It's quite stressful right now, and it's sad. And I hope we remember who we are and how important it is that we figure it out together.
Aicha Evans, thank you so much. You have been great and amazing. Any last words, anything else you want to close out with? I thought that was actually perfect, but anything else that you want to tell our folks before we let you go?
Have fun and control you. And by controlling you, you will affect people around you. But have fun. It's no matter what field you're in today, whether it's technology, liberal art, whatever the field is, we live at an incredible time in society with what AI, machine learning are bringing to the table. Have fun, enjoy it. And if you're early in your career, I'm actually jealous. You will see things in your lifetime that are absolutely amazing. So yeah, go and get things done.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Applause to you. We look to follow your journey, and we wish you all the best with the deal with Amazon. And we'll be looking forward to all the great technology and things to come out of that. So appreciate it very much. Be well.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. Thank you for having me. That was a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Right.
Bye.